Fairy Tail and I have a, let's say, complicated relationship with each other. I like it enough to have made a video abridging it, something I've been thinking of doing again once I have a bigger influence, can get actors together for, and can find time for again. Yet I accept that it's just a mediocre show with very questionable decisions behind its storytelling and characters. I've gone back and forth between which of these two feelings is stronger without having actually watched the show in a good long while, so I figured, what the hell, if I'm gonna put this to rest, I need to buck up and do it, starting from the very beginning. And what better way to chronicle my journey than by making some videos critiquing every arc as I go along. So I came to the conclusion that talking about it with people who are willing to listen and have differing opinions would be the best thing to do. I'll try to go point by point through the story instead of talking about the arc as a whole like usual. I don't want to leave out any details I could spend time explaining like I do in my other videos. Also, I'm speaking as if you've already seen the whole arc, so if you haven't, it's only about 9 episodes, not even that since it starts at episode 5, but there is some context stuff in the first 4. Look, there's a ton of spoilers ahead, just be warned. Since there's no better place to start than the beginning, I will be starting this video series with the Lullaby arc. Like most arcs, this one starts off with some guild hall banter. People having short, quippy interactions that don't generally go very far past trying to make the guild feel more like a crazy, somehow functional family, which is a theme that gets directly stated more than a few times. I like how even these set up some character arcs that take place later on, such as Loki's fear of celestial wizards like Lucy and why that's a thing. It may take an eternity and a half to get to them, but eventually they like to pop up. And then there are the stranger elements, like how way too much time is spent on Natsu and Gray fighting for no reason. Is it just because they use fire and ice magic respectively? Because ha 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 ha, that sure is funny. I also appreciate the concept of the dark guilds, as it makes the world feel a little more full. I mean, there are gangs who go outside the law in the real world, so it makes sense to have another type of organized crime group in Fiore. Anyway, let's talk about the story. At the moment, the guildmasters are at a conference to talk about things and stuff. It's a little vague, but seeing as how we're following guild members as the protagonists, it makes sense. That's just information we don't really need to be concerned with right now. By the way, only 3 people in the shot even look like they mean anything, and that's because there are only 3 people in the shot who mean anything tangentially related to the series. Meanwhile, a member of one of the conveniently aforementioned dark guilds, Eisenwald, stole and broke a spell on a special flute called Lullaby, an artifact that absorbs the souls of everyone who hears its song when played. Which is a bit strange if you think about it. First off, that's a very specific skill set required to kill a bunch of people. I can count the number of people I personally know that can play the flute on my one hand. Second, wouldn't it kill the user first based on proximity, thereby rendering the whole thing entirely pointless? And third, does it matter which song is played? Could you kill everyone with, say, Take On Me, or does it have its own special melody? And at what point in the song does everyone die? Is it right at the beginning, or at the end, or maybe somewhere in the middle? Right, Fairy Tail, got it. So Natsu, Gray, and Urza, backed by Happy and Lucy, in what has been called Fairy Tail's strongest team, which we'll just have to believe because we've been given no evidence to the contrary, hop on a train to go find out where Eisenwald is to kick their butts, which sets up a good place for the basic plot of the arc to be told. I mean, I know I just told you the basics, but in this scene, Gray and Lucy are told by Urza. Natsu doesn't hear until later because she knocked him out after deciding to be merciful and save him from his motion sickness. Really happy about that move, honestly. They forget him on the train because they were deep in exposition or something. Hey, it happens all the time and you know it. Leaving him alone with a member of Eisenwald. Question: why does this guy flaunt his dark guild status in public? Is it because Natsu happens to be in a guild? Because I'd hate to see this guy in the general public with anyone who isn't a protagonist. Well, a fight breaks out, an emergency train stop causes the Lullaby flute to be dropped so Natsu can see it, remember he doesn't know about the details of the mission because he was unconscious, and the mystery guy runs off as the train starts up again. Then this car shows up along with Urza and the gang, and it's powered by life juice. Talk about energy efficient, why haven't we switched off of gasoline to this stuff yet? I mean, it's magic energy, but that roughly equates to life juice in the Fairy Tail world. Then once the gang has left and the train gets raided by the rest of Eisenwald, we meet this guy who goes by Shinigami Aragorn. I mean, he's Aragorn the Reaper in the dub, but I know what a fucking Shinigami is. And oh shit, he says his flute belonged to Zareth. That name pops up very frequently, as nearly every arc revolves around or includes something that relates to Zareth. It's one of the few things that tie the story together and make it feel more like a world. And yeah, he's leader of Eisenwald, and he's gonna use a flute to kill a bunch of people. Don't ask why, we'll get to that later. Cut away to the Guildmaster Conference, and I just want to say, I find Master Bob f***ing hilarious. His design is a bit much, personally, but his voice actor nails his role perfectly and I can't get enough of him. Mira Jane informs Master Makarov using the power of what I wish email looks like of the formation of the guild's quote strongest team, and he nearly dies flat on the table because the whole guild is infamous for ruining all the shit they try to save by unintentionally blowing it up. But wait, if Natsu, Grey, and Urza are so strong that they can blow up half a city, then why did anyone permit them to team up? And why is it treated as just a normal thing? Get some discipline in them for Christ's sake. Oh, quick thing before I forget. Aragorn has this dumb habit where he likes to talk about others as flies for some reason. Like, all the time. I get that it's kind of his shtick, and by that I mean his only real character quirk outside of the magic he uses, but it gets really annoying and sounds downright petty in all honesty. Either kill them off so they can't stop you, or stop talking about how much you could totally kill them if you wanted. God, even the named members of the guild call everyone flies too. I guess they really respect/fear their leader. Okay, speaking of Aragorn, remember earlier when I said we'd talk about his dumbass plan later? Well, let's get on that now. In the train station, Aragorn gives this dumb speech about how they didn't appreciate the rights they had, so now they have to die. Which is just absolute horse shit. What rights is he talking about, and why does he care so much about them? Is it because they got kicked out of the guild leagues? Because not only could that have been entirely avoided if they just stopped killing people for profit, but it contradicts what this guy's named Kageyama by the way, was talking smack about to Natsu on the train. If being an illegal guild is so lame to him, why does Aragorn seem to want revenge on people who didn't, to quote him, appreciate the rights they held so dear, who remain willfully ignorant to the plight of those who had their rights stripped away? Well, it's clear that nothing he says makes any sense, so why does the rest of Eisenwald follow him so blindly? Oh right, evil and stuff. And then later on, he says that now his goal is to kill the guildmasters because I guess they had something to do with Eisenwald getting kicked out when the ruling was actually done by the Magic Council? None of his motivation makes any sense whatsoever, and it's completely contradicted by the world building that was done at the beginning of this arc literally 1 episode ago. And this whole thing was conveniently pointed out by Lucy immediately after his speech. Killing a bunch of people because you got punished for doing illegal shit just makes everything worse for everyone. After dissecting that ball of misery, let's continue with another contradiction. At the beginning of the arc, Urza told Natsu and Grey that she isn't so foolish as to think she can challenge an entire guild on her own, yet in the fight that ensues after the world's edgiest boy's emotional breakdown on top of the Lightpost of Shame, she practically solos most of the entire guild. Sure, Aragorn fucked off because there has to be a one-on-one fight involving Natsu later, and there are a couple of stragglers that Natsu and Grey take a good amount of time fighting for no actual reason. But adding them back into the fray wouldn't change much when she can beat a dozen guys in a single attack using the power of stills. I'm not sure if A1 couldn't hire animation staff to make these shots full motion, or if they just got lazy and thought that hinting at what happened is enough to convey the power of the strikes, but it happens a lot throughout the show and it's a little jarring. Yeah, Lucy sends in a spirit to lessen the load, however not only does Cancer do more to shame the men of the guild through male pattern boldness than actually injure them, but Urza did kind of use up a lot of magic energy driving the car, something that Grey happened to mutter shout at her multiple times. And even then, she still had enough to keep driving afterwards, and then she was on the verge of passing out. Except not really, because this is shown in anime. So I'm calling bullshit. She absolutely could have soloed the entire Eisenwald guild. But no, we have to fake a cohesive plotline just to add suspense. And she even flat out tells Natsu and Grey to chase Aragorn because I guess she decided against her initial intention of bringing them along? Shouldn't one of them have piped up and said, you know, this is a stupid plan, right? Maybe don't be an attentive contrarian? If it sounds like I'm just being a prick, that's because this first arc is actually bad. Which makes sense, as it only really serves as some world building and an introduction to 2 main characters' power sets, being Urza and Grey. Speaking of Grey, one thing that's been poking away at my sanity for a while is that for some reason, Grey talks very softly in most of his dialogue takes.
So this thing is so bad it even scares dark wizards?
I'm only hypothesizing.
Then I guess it's up to us to figure out where those Eisenwald guys are going in such a big hurry and why.
You're wicked, Grey!
Am I? If you try to break through that thing, it'll make mincemeat out of you.
I've already tried that.
I'm not sure if this is because the director wanted this odd edition, but actually, let me check the Japanese version.
その計画がララバイと関係あるのか。 想像だがな。
何かの理由でアイゼンバルトの奴らは急がざるを得ないんじゃねえか。
なぜ脱ぐ？
ありゃ、無理やり出ようとすりゃミンチになるぜ。
経験済みだ。
Yeah, it seems like more of a dubism. I'm not super familiar with a ton of voice actors, so I can't really say for sure why this change was made, but to me as an outsider, it's either because the director wanted Gray to seem more brooding and badass, which would at least sort of make sense based on backstory stuff revealed in the next arc, or because Gray's actor sometimes does better work at lower volumes? Which does make a ton of sense to me. I'll have to check for interviews to see if either claim holds any water, but it's just a bizarre change that I couldn't leave out. Anyway, Gray and Natsu still hate each other for no actual reason, although this time they agreed to just shut up and do their jobs for once, so I can't really complain. This is also the scene containing the first line where Gray speaks really softly that I'm totally okay with, as this is more of a character moment than anything else.
Don't die on me.
It's another iteration of the overarching fairy tale theme, which I'll talk about more at the end of this video. Sorry, there's so much to talk about right now. He and Natsu at least have differing fights, and when I say differing, I mean we start with no expectations of how strong Gray is while we've seen Natsu in battle before. And hey, we even get some overacting and edgy boy vibes from Gray. And hold on.
They may be old fogies, but they're the closest thing we have to parents.
Yeah, this is mostly a bit of foreshadowing to Gray's backstory, as well as the odd fact that most of the main members of the guild are around the same age and came by at around the same time, generally as orphans that Magroff took under his wing by letting them become members of the guild, so I'm gonna have to touch on it a bit more in the next video. However, I will talk about the cases where this does not apply. In the Fairy Tail Guild, since they're the only guild members we've been introduced to so far, there may be plenty of people who came as orphans and had nowhere else to go, but the rest of the guild either have been fully developed adults for many years, or their parents and or grandparents are members of the guild. They certainly have or had parental figures outside of the guildmaster, so what about them? I get that in this big, important moment, Gray had to seem really cool and caring for the people whose job it is to help as many people as possible, but ignoring a not insignificant population of the guild that we've been introduced to is sort of pointless, don't you think? Then when everyone else is beaten, Kageyama is nearly killed via friendly fire, or in this case, friendly fisting, a phrase I wish I didn't have to say out loud, and the protagonists regather, Aragorn gave them a big no you and started heading to murder the guildmasters for reasons I spoke of earlier.
The joke is there is no actual reason.
Yada yada, Lucy gets a new spirit from the Daybreak arc, literally the only contribution from that arc that matters. They all leave, and somehow despite Aragorn having about a 30-minute head start, Natsu and Happy still manage to fly fast enough to catch him over this ravine in, I'm gonna guess 3 minutes? Just so we can have that final climactic fight. And with this fight, let me stop shitting on the poor writing and characterization for a second, because parts of this fight are actually pretty neat. It's a very short tug-of-war, with Natsu having the upper hand, then Aragorn pulling out something that can't be dealt with as Natsu's fire magic gets blown out. Then he gets pissed off for some reason. Happy makes it worse by being a little shit, intentionally this time. Natsu starts melting the train tracks and ripping them apart, proving I guess he can output temperatures of over 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit and a pulling force of 53,000 pounds per square inch, and is engulfed with flames, which based on this very scientific model of the fight that Happy provides, removes Aragorn's wind barrier armor by throwing a heaping helping of science at it. This fight started a good trend in this series of applying scientific principles to magical fights, in almost the same way JoJo's Bizarre Adventure does it. Sure, JoJo's does it much, much better, but it's still nice to see here. Also, yeah, that whole flashback of Natsu being told fire can do more than just burn stuff as long as he believes hard enough? Guess how many times that power gets used again. I'll wait. In between cuts of the big fight, however, we see bits of interaction between Gray, Lucy, and Kageyama that I actually sort of appreciate. At first, he thinks they're kidnapping him to later torture and interrogate him for everything he knows about Aragorn's plan, but no, Natsu and the gang just hate leaving people to die. Gray even scolds Kageyama for having such a one-track mind when it comes to life and death, saying, hey, maybe don't be a little bitch and try to enjoy shit every now and then, alright? Which is great, because his "I give up, just kill me already" speech was driving me insane, so I really felt for Gray when he joked.
If you want to die, we can make that happen.
Chill, Gray.
You'd think this would be the end of the arc, right? Bad guy gets beaten and underling learns a lesson about life? Nope! Because in a group effort of sheer stupidity, No one grabs the damn flute until Kageyama snags it and the car and hightails it to the guildmasters, because I guess he learned nothing from Gray actually being a real person in the car ride. I'm almost sick of calling out these extreme lapse judgments, so I'm moving on. He gets within 100 feet of the conference hall and decides this is definitely close enough for a flute to easily be heard, which, no, it's absolutely not, and anyone who has played in the marching band can attest to that. But Makarov shows up and somehow knows who this guy is and what he's doing with the flute and his entire plan, so he just gives up. How did Makarov know all of this? He was in a conference the whole damn time, and no guildmaster knows the members of every single guild, let alone the Dark Guilds. And even then, the plan was only known to the members of Eisenwald and was only revealed to the 5 who tried to stop them, so what the hell? Right, fairy tale. Got it. Anyway, the flute gets pissed off enough to become a giant wooden demon ready to kill everyone indiscriminately, which is another sentence I'm upset I have to say out loud. And despite having fought a bunch of dudes and driving a car that runs on her life energy for I'm assuming an hour or two, Urza steps up to fight along with Natsu, a guy who got the shit beat out of him by Aragorn. Gray and Lucy are the only ones who are even capable of fighting. Oh wait, aside from all the guildmasters currently behind them! If this demon made by Zeref really is so powerful it can kill everyone in the city in an instant, maybe let the guildmasters all step in and make this thing insta-die? Except no, we need this totally final climactic battle to finish the arc. Wait, actually, how did they even get to the conference hall in time? Kageyama stole the car from them, so they would have to walk all the way there, and I'm assuming that's a good few miles, which, considering the walking speed of normal people, minus one exhausted Urza, and the possible driving speeds of a car, means it should have been a long time in between when he gets there and when the rest get there. Well, whatever. They manage to destroy the demon flute, and what happens? Half the town gets blown up again, just like Makarov said they would. That's a neat little prediction I wanted to point out. Sometimes characters will outright say things that later on actually happen. Not super often, but when they happen, it's always neat. Is it too much? That's debatable, but I wanted to point it out. And all the townsfolk are super pissed at them because they didn't kill that 100-foot-tall demon without destroying any property in the process? God, I think I'm just about done here. This arc is just really bad when you take time to sit down and think about the decisions being made, but there's a bit more I want to talk about. A shonen arc means nothing if it had no overall effect on the progression of the show, so let's talk about the effect it had, as well as the themes that the first arc set up and tried to expand upon. This arc does set up a couple of themes that it does little with, those being that friends are your family, and that strangers can become your friends if you believe in them hard enough. Which, sure, I'll believe that, even though they're the same as the general theme of the show. This arc does technically set up that theme, though. The only main theme unique to this arc is that there's more to the world than just life and death, and it's what you do with your life that really matters more than if you just get killed or something. Not a super strong one, but it still rings kind of true. Other than that, the Lullaby arc doesn't really do anything else to influence the rest of the series. It sets the stakes at the very least. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want innocent people to die for no reason or have my town destroyed, and they generally rise higher and higher from there. One last thing. Just to spice things up, I'm going to rate each arc on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 being absolutely incredible and the first thing I think of when I think of Fairy Tail, and 1 being absolute shit garbage that I never want to think about again. Where does the Lullaby arc rate on this scale? Probably a 3, a solid 3 at best. After this, I'm just ready to move on to the next arc, Galuna Island, and talk about why and how it tries to fix everything that this arc failed. I'm Van Campone, and I will see you guys next time.